So, Dean,
Vito.
this is going to possibly come across as me interviewing you, but I have a point, or I have a destination. So I'm going to start with the loaded question. How did the whole shirt coming off thing come about?
Wow. Well, again, even though you and I are talking to each other, usually like in your car, and that's the
Yeah,
spirit of this podcast.
yeah.
I am super aware that other people are listening to this, so it doesn't necessarily alter my answer, but it does make me always try to put things into context. So I think when I die, my gravestone won't list any comic books I ever made or any ever written or drawn or anything. It'll be that Dean took his shirt off.
Yeah.
And I've been almost regretting that since I started it in a way.
I was going to ask that
Um,
eventually. I was just interested in the kind of genesis of it and
right.
how you ultimately how you feel about it. But
So
how did it
how I
start?
feel about it is like, take your shirt off. No, take your shirt off, man. Just take it off. What? Who
Yeah.
cares, right? Like I'm okay with that. You don't have to be thin, fat, beautiful, ugly. Who cares? You're human beings, right?
Mhm.
I think the short answer, now that there's a little bit of hindsight, is that believe it or not, I'm a shy person. Believe it or not, and it's a way to expose yourself where you just like, here I am, okay, warts and all, like love me or leave me kind of thing. And my dad told me two interesting stories. My dad, James Haspiel, look him up. He knew Marilyn Monroe,
Did a
and a
book
lot of the
about her.
blonde bombshells mentioned him before. He, when I was younger, he told me two interesting stories that stuck with me. Um, One was Marilyn Monroe was at a party and someone said hi to her and said, "Oh, I love your earrings. What beautiful earrings you have." And she said, "Thank you very much." And she walked to the bathroom and took the earrings off.
Uh-huh.
And not because she was insulted or whatever, but she wanted the people just to see
Hmm.
her face, not be distracted. Now, of course, the person probably was just nervous and was like, "I'm going to say something nice about your clothing or something or whatever,"
Right.
right?
Like this is an icebreaker.
Um, Wait, I lost you. Can we hear you?
I hope we can hear me.
Okay, yeah, I can
Otherwise,
hear you.
I was
All
going to
right.
say,
And then
so it was kind of like an icebreaker for the person, and she might have taken it the wrong way or something.
right. So, or no, she didn't even, I think the moral of that story is that she definitely wanted people to see her, even though, the minute you put on a tie, you're lying, like
Right.
you're trying to be something elevated, or you do something to your hair or you wear jewelry, whatever. But and the other quick story he told me was that James Dean, the actor, he was only in three movies,
Yeah.
and it might have been the Rebel movie, Rebel Without
Rebel
a
without a
Cause.
cause.
And I think he was supposed to have an emotional scene. Yeah, yeah. He was supposed to have like an emotional scene, and he couldn't get it right, and it was in public, and all these people were watching from afar James Dean acting, and they would yell action, and he would flub or whatever. And finally, he walked over to the side, pulled out his penis, and peed on a tree because I guess he had to go to the bathroom.
Right.
But then he went and did the scene, and he felt very vulnerable. He had exposed himself, let's say, right? And
Mhm.
so it allowed him to just shrug off whatever shackles or whatever he was feeling. And in my case, that's the shirt, right?
Okay.
Uh, and like I didn't even know how that would go over today at like an SPX or at a San Diego, but I mean I've done it. And some people like only know me for that, like
Did
Frank
it
Cho, the cartoonist, only knows me as the guy who took off his shirt. That's it.
did it start at a convention or did it start like at a signing or like how did like if you can remember, like, did someone dare you? Like, what was the thing?
I don't think anybody ever dared me because why? Like it's like take off your pants, Vito. Like
Right,
you
right.
know. I think it might have just been me kind of maybe was feeling nervous and had to take off my shirt. I mean, I presented an award at, I believe, at SPX that I gave to James Sturm for like winning best graphic novel.
I
I walked
remember
up to the
this.
podium and I just took off my shirt. And I was welcomed to a sea of cell phones. Like as I was reading out the nominations, everyone had their cell phone up, and which is always funny whenever I see like a concert and you see everyone's trying has their cell phone up. First of all, your cell phone is taking a crappy video of what's happening right before your very eyes, and you should just be enjoying what's happening, experience it. Like
Right.
last night I went to a salon at KGB Bar in the Red Room where my friend filmmaker owner Tukel and a bunch of other people sang songs and told stories and jokes or whatever. And usually what I do is I try to take some pictures and video, whatever. And last night I was like, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy this. And like, I don't need to record everything. I
Yeah,
just veered away from, but anyway.
I think we as a society have gotten to a part where because we have this mobile technology that connects us to the world, I think we've gotten
Mhm.
to a point where we want to share, for better or worse, we want to share our experiences with other. Remember, Instagram used to just be pictures of food at one point. Um,
Yeah, I used to say a picture of your lunch, right?
yeah,
That was Instagram. Yeah.
yeah, and like it's become less that nowadays. Um, but there's a lot more witnesses to what is happening than there are people experiencing what is happening, if that makes sense.
It does.
It's like
And
the
like to the point
currency
where,
the currency of cool is proving that you were at somewhere or that you did something.
or and not currency of cool, which I agree that there's that. I mean, like Instagram was lunch and cats and maybe
Mhm.
boobs, right? Those
Yeah,
that was the trifecta. Now it's a culture of cool, or I was there, or you had to be there. But worse, what I've discovered is the amount of people that are just regurgitating the news.
yeah,
I watch the news. I get to watch some of the news and find out what happened, or a version of it. But everybody's not everybody, but there are a lot of people out there that are becoming like their own ad hoc news reporters, and like they're just
right.
constantly sharing links to this. Now if they're trying to make a point, sure, here's like a way to prompt the discussion by linking to something. Or when someone dies, sometimes rather than just saying so and so rest in peace, I'll say so and so rest in peace, and then I might link to an actual obituary, because it's like I'm basically saying this really did happen. you
Mhm.
know because the other thing, and I'm guilty of this too, I get a lot of my news from social media.
Yeah,
Like I'll put on the news in the morning and late at night for like 15 minutes here and there. But in between, where am I when I'm not crafting stories or whatever? I'm on social media, and suddenly I'm being told what's going on because half the people want to report the news on social media.
right. Let's get back to the shirtless thing. You were saying something like you wish you never did it. Do you feel like that is your brand, or up until now was your brand, or like how do you feel about how do you how do you feel about shirtless Dean, basically?
I love shirtless Dean. He he's uh he's I don't know. He's set a tone. He changes the properties of a room. You know, again, for better or for worse. I'm a provocateur. For someone who claims to be shy, I'm also a provocateur. I can't help myself, and it's
Mhm.
very easy, to be a provocateur. I also don't have any fashion sense. I wear a black T-shirt and blue jeans and Blundstone boots. That's it. You know, I don't think about the way I look. And maybe that goes back to the Maryland analogy, where I don't wear jewelry. I don't wear anything where you're looking at the what's printed on my t-shirt for a discussion point or something.
Mhm.
And I don't criticize other people for it. I just don't, it's not my thing.
I do
So
that
I
to an
think when
extent. Like whenever
most
I'm
people do.
Yeah, whenever I'm at a convention, I try to at least one day during the convention, I try to wear a stray t-shirt just to kind of represent my brand.
Absolutely.
Or I'll wear there was one year at Heroes Con where I wore a shirt and tie every day. And I don't know why but I was like, I'm going to present an image of not success because I'm clearly not super successful. I'm successful to a degree, but
Yeah.
in the fact that I'm further along than most people starting out. But
Right.
but I wanted to, I wanted to elevate, in a sense, the idea of what a comic book creator can be. Jason Little, I remember, used to wear suits, um, and Seth, uh, the cartoonist Seth, was always wearing like a hat and spats and stuff. Like I always appreciated that. Like I always like that someone is a character as much as their work, and I think that goes to
Right.
you as well. Like you taking your shirt off is very Billy Dogma, like broad chested,
Absolutely.
hairy. Like it's almost like, I mean, I know that Billy Dogma has some autobiographical parts to it, maybe
Right.
but like the thing that we usually see Billy Dogma wearing is no shirt and jeans. And
Yeah,
what
yeah,
is Dean
absolutely.
Haspiel in some cases, not all the time, but that is Dean Haspiel, no shirt and jeans. So
Absolutely. And I think that that's okay. I mean, I think when it comes to Billy Dogma, it's funny because like sometimes when you're really close to something, you can't see it, right? So
right.
like what you just explained, like duh, like of course, right? I didn't even think about that. It just makes sense. But when I think about Billy Dogma, I do think about Marlon Brando and On the Waterfront.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that.
That's what I'm thinking about when I'm writing him, and
Mhm.
drawing him is that kind of swagger, that kind of like 1950s attitude, and a blue collar worker, which I have never been a blue collar worker,
Mhm.
and I admire it very much. And I think that there's something just basic and true to that kind of sensibility. So I don't know what my quote brand is. I do think that like if you wanted to be on the nose. There is a physicality. There's a to my quote brand. I think
Mhm.
to the point where I've buried very well the idea that I might even be semi-intellectual because I am like a brute, right? Walking into a room, uh, and I'm okay with that. It's like you have to have a conversation with me to find out. Oh, I'm not just a brute.
Well, I think, it's funny because whenever I've talked about Stray, I've always described it as being semi-autobiographical because it's about a young man dealing with the death of his father. And a lot of how I dealt with my father's death makes its way into the book. So there's you can make the argument that Jack Kirby doesn't look like any of his characters, but the Thing is the most Jack Kirby character because it is the outer expression of his inner being, or something like that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
But
the
while we're
question,
talking brand, well, before you go, but while we're
yeah,
talking brand, you said like wearing a T-shirt that says "Stray" on it I don't think that's your brand. That's you, promoting something that you
right.
co-created, right?
Right.
But what would you say is a Vito-ism? Like how do you spot Vito in a room? Like what makes you Vito? You think, or separate you from other folks?
Bald-headed writers. um, because I
There's a
love,
lot of bald-headed writers.
dude, I tell the story all the time, and it makes him giggle. Jen Van Meter once thought I was her husband, Greg Rucka, just from the back, and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Let's go." And I said, where are we going?" And she backed off. Um,
That's
so
hilarious.
yeah, you can spit and get a bald-headed writer.
Of
I don't
course.
think that would be my particular brand, but I think my um I don't know. Like I never really like I've always wondered and I always tried to cultivate a sort of brand, but I don't know that I have one. You know what I mean? Like I think, and not to say that I'm generic or that I'm not outstanding in some ways. I just like I'm. the I'm loud, but like at shows, you can attest I will sit there and just read if I have to just to pass the time because I'm just in my own head or I'm not being stimulated by someone talking to me or anything like that. Like I can be very introverted and very reticent
Absolutely.
to share, but I think by and large I'm an extrovert. Like I think I'm very outgoing. But I think, like I have to be engaged in some way to do that.
Well, I think that might come from your ability to act and the fact that you are an actor, so you know how to
Yeah.
turn it on, let's say. In
Yeah.
fact, I
Like
was
Marilyn,
talking to a
probably.
guy, right, and I was talking to like last night at this thing. I was talking to this actor, comedian Craig Bierko, I think his name is.
Hmm.
He's been in a lot of TV shows, and at one point he goes, what have I seen you? You're an actor, right? I'm like, no, I'm not an actor. I'm a cartoonist. And then we talked about comics because he had done some bits about Spider-Man and Superman on stage, and we talked about that a little bit. But with you, I think like not that this is a brand thing, but it's a personality thing. Like you're super earnest,
Mm,
like
to a
I
fault.
think you're to a fault, right? And I actually think I'm semi-earnest in a lot of ways. I'm very sentimental, and I think you're sentimental, and I think we connect on our sentimentality.
Right.
But you're a guy that will use the word like ostensibly a lot, and whenever your voice comes through really clear when you write a Substack post or a comic book or whatever. You have a particular way you talk, like where I craft my writing in this weird kind of poetic hip hop Ionesco whatever mammoth type thing that I do, right?
Uh,
You have your voice comes through loud and clear. You type in pauses, you backtrack and then move forward, like
I totally do.
and
Yeah. Yeah. I, you know
I
what?
love it.
I've always been cognizant of the fact that I'm able to write in my voice. Um,
Mhm.
whether it be a blog post or dialogue for a character or something like that. I think my characters do have different voices, but I think that I've somehow, I can't say that I've learned it. It's just something that eventually just became. Uh, but there's a clarity that I have of getting my point. And anybody watching this and listening to this will be like, well, you say and you stammer and you and you stop a lot and you fidget and you play with your shirt and your face and everything.
Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah, my OCD is out of control. But I think when I'm writing, because I can control it, there is, like you said, like there is a clarity of my voice coming through. I don't,
Right.
I don't know, like if that's a brand or if that's a vetoism, that's great. I tend to think of what's one thing that I will always have in a script somehow or other, like like a vetoism, quote unquote, that when you read one of my works, you'll be like, oh, that's something he always does. I always have a pylon. Like it's like that
Uh-huh.
Bugs Bunny cartoon where all these dogs jumped on Bugs Bunny and like they pile and they're like dog pile on the rabbit. And like I always have a pylon at some point where a bunch of thugs or villains are jumping on a hero and he's got to fight his way out of it. And the other thing is I'm very big into redemption stories. I like
Mm.
seeing somebody. That's one of the biggest things about Stray is um, it is a redemption story. It's about someone who turned his back on the world of his father and kind of gets dragged, not dragged, but like forced to come back into it. And like instead of doing it the old way, he has to come up with his new way. He has to, pardon the pun, he has to go stray from that path
Yep.
that he used to know. So
Yeah.
redemption and pylons, that's the two things you can count on when you read my stuff. Um,
It's
how
funny
about
because
you? Like,
I'm
what do
I'm
you know
much
that?
more basic than that. My I think my trend, which is actually very commercial, is I tend to always put a punch and a kiss somehow in every story of mine,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Uh and it comes with a lot of stuff around it,
Hmm.
obviously. So, but those
What do
I
you
mean, because I'm more action oriented.
what do you attribute that to? Like, what do you if you can somehow parse it, what are you trying to attempt by doing that? Like, what do you like for me with the pylons and with the redemption again? Like, I think they go hand in hand. the idea of this great adversity that you have to overcome. And it's like in the immediate sense, and then also in the broad picture, overcoming the person you used to be to become the person you're going to become. So, what do you think the punch and
And
kiss?
also, well, going back to what you just said, the pylon is like the attack. It's like
Mhm.
the knee jerk reaction to someone or something, and then the redemption is the climbing out through.
Yeah,
Like when you were saying pylon, normally what a person should be thinking is like 10 people jumping on one person or something, or
right.
three people, or whatever. You know what came to my head,
Mm.
because it's more metaphorical, was Steve Ditko's drawings of Spider-Man under all that
Yeah,
building. Water is coming through, and he's trying to lift out a whole bunch of building that's landing on top of him.
right.
Uh, and he goes through this existential crisis where he's like, I got to get medicine for my Aunt May. I got to fight Doc Ock again someday or something. Like all the like, I'm a young kid.
I
Like
want to give
I
up.
take picture,
Yeah.
all this stuff, and that's a kind of pylon, of
Mhm.
sorts, right? You pile on yourself, when
Yeah.
you're trapped and caught in a situation. For me, I don't know. I deeds, not words. As much as I love to write words,
Yeah.
like to me, at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words, and I know that's, I didn't make that up. It's just feels super true to me. Um, so what are the extremes? A punch and a kiss. Are the
Yeah.
extreme opposites, or sometimes they're the same, which is also crazy.
Mm.
A kiss could feel like a punch, or a
Yeah.
punch could feel like a kiss.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know. I've said in the past that I never went to therapy, but I realized that I was attracted to conflict because of the way I was raised,
Mm.
the way I was shown and taught love in some ways, by my father in particular. Um, and so I go towards the conflict.
Mm.
uh, I don't mind having conflict. Whereas most people, that's the last thing. They don't want any drama. They'd rather walk away and not deal. And I'd rather confront it, a situation, if I can.
I think in like if like I've been to therapy, I go to therapy, and I think that like I come across as adversarial, um, or confrontational even, because I am most of the time the loudest voice in the room. But
Mm.
my I grew up with my mother's family. I didn't really grow up. I mean, I knew my dad. Went to my dad's parents' house. He was married. I went and visited my stepmom, my little sister, and everything. He wasn't out of my life, but he wasn't a constant fixture. Um,
Mm.
so my mom and her family, the Puerto Rican side of my family, they were, and I feel like because it was such a huge family that like whenever I'm not when I'm alone, but whenever I feel like I'm in over my head or I'm on an island by myself, I tend to try to create a family for myself. Comics is a good way to do that. You find a lot of like-minded people that will I don't want to say compliment your work and make it sound disingenuous, like they speak about you highly, to your face. Um, uh, when I played sports in high school, I was definitely calling all the guys my brothers and calling their mom's mom, because my mom was in New York and I was with my grandparents here in Pennsylvania. So it's, like I think that's the thing I always try to, cultivate around me. Best best scenario I can use. One of the greatest gifts I ever had was last year at Baltimore. It was Saturday. Um, Colm Griffin, who was nominated for Best Cover Artist last year for a Robotech cover he did, came in from Ireland. Never met him before. He did a cover for Stray, and he introduced himself, and we were talking, and we were getting on and everything. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, my sister shows up, like my older sister. And I look, and not only is my sister there, my cousin Robert's there, his wife, his son, and it was just like it was like oh my god, my family and my family are together, You know what I mean? Like
Right,
it
right,
was
right,
so, and like to the point where we took a family picture and I told Colm, who doesn't look like my family at all. Like my family's all dark skinned, Puerto Rican or black or whatever.
right,
And like Colm is like a white dude from Ireland. I was like,
right.
get in this picture. You're part of my family now. So like I wrote, when I wrote the caption on it, I was like, uh, my sister Maria, who by the way, happy birthday, Maria. Her birthday was yesterday.
Happy
Um,
birthday.
my sister Maria, my cousin Robert, and then I wrote my cousin Colm. So like, I tend to want to attract that, you know what I mean? Like to the point where Charlie and I call each other brother. Um, Sean Isaacs and I call each other brother.
Right,
Ray Height and I, he's Uncle Ray to my kids, you know.
right.
So it's your Uncle Dean sometimes. So it's
Yep,
very.
yep.
I don't like I don't take those relationships lightly. I kind of want to make build those relationships, you know. And you know, we're not stupid, you know, like I'm not naive. There's a lot of people you can't bring in like that because either they're toxic or they don't have that willingness to kind of come together like that. But that's fine, you know, like we all come to it at some point, you know, under our own terms in our own time.
And you're talking about Baltimore. Baltimore for us traditionally
Yeah.
is the family comic show because of the Nathans, Marcus Shelley Nathan, Brad
Mhm.
Tree, Randy, the crew, everybody, the
Yeah.
staff. They make us feel so super welcome, and and it's still about comics, that show,
Yeah.
and it's so important. And they bring us to the awards. They feed us. Like, I don't know, man. Like, that's my favorite show of the year, and I've said
That
that
is
for many
that is
years.
by far the I've been to a lot of shows. Between Heroes Con and Baltimore Comic Con, I don't think you can ever have a bad time at either of those. Um,
Right,
and I haven't been to Heroes in a long time, just because it's usually falling on my birthday, and I usually do different things on my birthday, or it falls on Father's Day, and it's like I can't do that to my kids. Like you know, they want to, you know, celebrate me, so let's you know let me do that instead of being
right,
selfish and going to a comic convention where it's just going to be about me. You know, like
right.
whereas with Baltimore, I as soon as I see my name on the website, I go family reunions on, you know,
Yep.
and like it's such a to the point where Shelley and Mark's son Reese,
Mm.
he had and he's going through kind of a medical issue right now. I don't think it's Crohn's, but it might be.
It's
Uh,
something like a very super Crohn's type
yeah,
situation, I think.
and I'm
Yeah,
gonna put the link to the GoFundMe in our show notes. So if
yeah,
you're watching this and you're able to donate, please donate. Again, that's our family. Like we
yeah.
absolutely love them and adore them, you know, and Reese, such a good kid. Such a good
Yeah.
kid. He was doing Pokemon cards one year with Tom Zoller, I think.
Hmm.
And like he actually now like will draw comics or you know pinups and stuff at the show. So he's part of our family, man.
Yep,
I love watching that. You know, like he was a little kid, now he's growing up, and you know,
yep,
going
yep.
through a rough time right now, and I feel for him.
Absolutely. Same here. So yeah, uh, anybody can help. Anybody who loves that show and loves those people, we gotta stick together in the
Yeah.
best way we can, So
So going back to shirtless Dean and taking off your shirt and everything, is it something that you have phased out? You know, like is it something that you're not like?
I
Let me
wish I
think of
had.
it this. Let me have you think of it like this: Are you cognizant of it now more than ever because of whatever? Like maybe you're getting older, or maybe it's become corny, or whatever. You know.
I mean, I'm a little thicker than I was
Mhm.
when I started, and that's fine. Again,
Mhm.
whatever. Uh, I think it's more like a Tourette's. Like, I have to do it when it happens. Like,
Mhm.
maybe before I did it a bunch of times, it was just a nervous reaction or something, and then it became like, oh, this is funny to do because you get some kind of reaction or something or whatever. It's so silly. It's
Yeah.
so base, right? Um, and yet I'm and the thing I don't like is when someone's like, Dean, take your shirt off, like I'm their monkey,
Right.
like
Right.
It has to come from me, okay?
Right.
Whether I'm feeling confident or insecure, whatever it is, it just happens. And so when it happens more recently, and I have done it, help, man. I'm on the third floor of a warehouse, a CubeSmart warehouse, where and floors 1, 2, 4, and 5 are where storage units. The third floor is about 100 rooms filled with artists.
Hmm.
And I was walking down the hall a week ago, and there was like someone way down the other hall, and they were just a blur. I didn't know who they were. I just pulled my shirt up, just like as a hello. And they just kind of stopped walking. There might have been a smile, I don't remember. And I just
Huh.
kept walking and turned to left at the intersection and went to the bathroom or something. And I don't know why I did that. Like I can't explain it, and I don't even want to. You know, again, was I just kind of bored and it was just like, oh, two people walking down the hall, somebody lifts their shirt, keep going. And it's so easy and simple, and yet, it really can kind of either draw people toward you or repel them, right?
I feel like you're aware of the innate comedy of it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the immediate reaction is usually like, what the heck does, and then like you can't, it's almost like I'm gonna say this and I hope it doesn't come across crass. But I think everybody will understand what I mean. It's almost like a Japanese game show where
Totally.
like it's like you out of nowhere something just happens. Like there's this one clip that I think I've sent you on Instagram, um where this woman is so excited to set off a bomb, and like she's like 1, 2, 3, and then she hits a button, and then she's like, "What's going to happen?" And then the bomb crashes through the room that she's in, and literally explodes. Like she's running out of the room, and like you can and like out to the outdoors, and it's like there's an explosion. I don't know what
Right,
the explosion is, if it's just lights, but like
right,
it looks like fire. So
right,
she could have gotten hurt, but like
right,
at the same
right.
time, it's like she didn't expect that to happen, which is
At all,
why
at
I
all.
I don't think anybody expects Dean's shirt to come off. Like,
Well, I mean, like I said, there are some people who are aware of my quote legend or mythology,
mhm,
which is so ridiculous, and that's what I regret. Because I don't want to be known for that,
right.
you know. And then there are people like that don't know that, like they're just like you said, like what the hell just happened? Why'd you do that? Like, and then it just again it kind of almost like resets the button in a room sometimes,
Sure.
you know. I can do it with words. I've done it with a joke or or recited something that out of left field. But we all have that ability. It's
Right.
whether we choose to do something or not. And am I trying to get attention in the room? Maybe sometimes that could be. Who
Mhm.
knows? I don't always track it.
Did
So
you, did you, I know we mentioned when I was coming up, I was very active in acting and stuff like that. Did you ever do anything like that? Did you ever do any kind of acting, or were you always art?
so my late brother Michael was kind of like the actor. They were kind of grooming him to be an actor, and like I've mentioned, Shelley Winters,
Mhm.
the famous actress and director, because she directed plays and stuff, put my brother in a play, and we used to go to the actor's studio. And I
Wow.
remember like my brother was in a play. I forget the name of it right now. I think it was an Edward Albee play, but he had
Jesus.
done a few. And anyway, there was like Steve Railsback from the Stuntman. There was Susan Terrell, famous actress from Fat City and other things. What else? There was a whole bunch of actors. Oh, Michael J. Pollard,
Hmm.
from Bonnie and Clyde and Star Trek. If you look him up, so and so he was kind of being groomed to be an actor, and yet I did do like a couple of things, and I did not feel confident or good about it,
Well,
to
the
be
reason why
honest.
I
I
asked is
remember that.
because the shirt, like taking off the shirt just seems like a very improv thing. Like
Oh yeah,
you're committing to a scenario. Um,
yes,
in your case, you're committing to a scenario that not everybody's aware of, but like you're committing
right,
to the point where you like Chris Farley, they always talk about his level of commitment to a bit
right,
where he like
yeah,
if
yeah,
he has to fall down dead on stage, he will roll off the stage, run through the aisles and like fall down in someone's lap in the audience. like
Yeah.
to show his level of commitment, which I don't. I didn't study improvisation, but like I don't know what the not the protocol, but like where do you stop? Like how do you know when to stop?
Well,
Because just keep going.
I think in actual improv, it's yes and, right? And
Yes.
you don't say no. The minute someone says no, you can't really go too much further than that because they're trying to kill it, squash it. And I
Mhm.
actually have gone to a couple improv, shows, and
Mhm.
it is fascinating to watch and see how it works. It's very rare that I've met my match, and I mean in terms of what you're talking about, that this like surreal energy that sometimes I spout. Um, and I had a friend. I have a friend named Christian Urich, who whose uncle is Robert Urich, the actor.
Yeah.
Okay, and Christian, you may have met him, Cooley C.
Yeah, I believe so.
I met him in college, and he has a band called Tortured Soul, and he travels the world with his band. It's a soul band. He's an incredible singer and drummer and songwriter. He kind of has like a Stevie Wonder type sound. Incredible drummer, incredible improv. He'll go improv on drums.
Mm.
That is next level.
Yeah.
But when we were roommates, we used to try to outdo each other, man. I actually drew a comic about him called Open. That's a whole other story. Where do you remember that
I know
story,
the
Vito?
story. I remember the
Ah,
story. I'm trying to remember. Was it in Beef with Tomato?
it's in. It was collected. I believe it was collected in Beef and Tomato. Maybe
Okay.
not. It might have been in Opposable Thumbs,
Oh, right, right. Okay.
which was my
But yeah, I remember
first kind
reading
of.
the story.
Yeah. So I mean, it got really outrageous. Uh, I'm not even going to tell that story right now.
No, no,
Some other
like
time.
that's good.
But talk about commitment. I had nothing on him. His at some point he'd be looking at his eyes, and you'd see the eyes just go from middle distance to wall-eyed. That's how, like, his face would go flat, like he was in another zone, and it would terrify me. And I knew I was out. There's no way I could beat that or compete with that or anything,
Right.
And I loved it. It made me scared, and like it's very rare that I feel scared, which is probably why I watch a lot of horror movies, because I like to get spooked. Comedy makes you laugh, horror makes you scared, and they're shared feelings in some way. They're very extreme feelings to be
Yeah.
scared or to laugh. So
Oh, that's good.
I don't know. He's just one of the very few people that like I admire greatly because of the fact that he can really commit to a bit.
It's a rare thing. Like it's someone that can, without getting into too much detail, because this was the late '90s. A friend of mine, Chris Schiavo, very good friend of mine, uh, kind of taught me everything there is to know about podcasting. Really, um, he and I used to be roommates, and we would we would try to out cringe the other, like
Uh-huh.
as hard as we could. And like we were sitting in the car one day, and like he puts his arm around my neck, like like around my shoulders, like kind of like you would, like a significant other. And I kind of like do this, like lean into it, just because I'm
Right.
like, trying to, push the bit along. And like then he
Right.
takes his other hand, he starts rubbing my chest. So then what I do is I go to suck on his thumb or something, and then he just goes, "Nope, I'm out."
No.
So
See, there's always a line. At some
yeah, yeah.
point, you draw that line, and I love coming up to that line. Uh, oh God, what was it? Was it the comedian? Was it Patton Oswalt was talking about a comedian? He might have been talking about Doug Stanhope,
Mm.
about how a lot of comedians try to get to that line, to that cliff, but it's Doug Stanhope just vaults off that cliff to get to the place where and I could be getting this wrong, and maybe I'm just swapping out comedians or something. And that's how
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel. But no, I do like how much you commit to a bit. So, but when you're talking about bits and acting, well, first of all, two things. One, you said your buddy taught you about all you know about podcasting.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So
Like he
you're
used to have a
to do it
podcast.
in the bathroom, to be near a toilet is one of the.
I'm pretty sure the acoustics in this room show that I've learned nothing, because it's not very conducive to podcasting. But yeah, like he very early in podcasting, like I would say about 16 years ago, maybe 17 years ago. Like
Right.
he was just doing a like a weekly show with our friend Keith Carney and Staten Island, very, very rudimentary. Um,
Mhm.
he being a musician, both of them really, they kind of knew how to work boards and stuff like that. So they were, like it was like a professional setup, and then eventually they got uh, somebody to engineer it for him and stuff. And like,
Right.
so he's working the board remotely, and then he starts working the board, in studio, like it was a big deal, So from them, even though I don't work uh, this thing, this is just two dudes talking on Zoom. But
Right.
even though like I don't really do a lot of that on like on the show, when I'm mixing the audio for Spotify, like I'm doing a little bit of that. So like
Oh, okay.
so
All
yeah,
right. And I was gonna ask because like you did you want to be an actor, or did you just like acting when you got some parts or something? Like what was that all about?
I like I still want to be an actor. I still think I can do it. I still think I have that
Yeah.
talent, like not just the drive, but the talent. Because I just felt like I was always, and this sounds like I'm blowing smoke up my own ass, but like I've always felt like I had that unteachable thing, when it
Right.
comes to acting and performing. Um, I still, yearn for it. More, I think at one point I was so um, dedicated to being in film, but I've come to really enjoy stage, and theater and productions that are smaller and more intimate. Like I was in the shower, I want to say 2.5 weeks ago or something like that, and I think Sadie had brought up that she wanted to start doing plays in high school when she goes to high school next year. So I think I was just thinking about like, that would be fun if she's doing it and I'm doing it, and we can kind of play off of each other, not to ride on our coattails or anything, but just kind of like we can teach each other something. And I started thinking like, what would be something that I know that at this advanced age I could do? And I was like, I'd really love to play Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman. Like Arthur Miller, like
Lost you there for a second.
but I was just saying that like I would love to do Death of a Salesman. Um,
Oh yeah.
any Arthur
Yeah,
Miller
man.
play. Like I really enjoy that play a lot. So I feel like I could play Willie Loman in that. Still, I might be
Or well not now. I would
yeah,
say now at this age. Right, right. But I
and
could also see you playing happier.
I've always enjoyed Shakespeare as well. So I can probably do a good King Lear or something like that at this point too.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm because I've written four produced plays and I've written a new one that I might add more to. I'm not sure yet. And I'm start writing another one. Uh, I do tend to go to the theater once in a while. Edward Albee might be one of my favorites, and
Yeah,
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf
yeah,
is
absolutely.
might be the one. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, but then there's another playwright who's also an actor named Tracy Letts, who's a really good writer as well. William Friedkin adapted two of his plays, Killer Joe and Bug, which are incredible, and they
Yeah.
were plays, and they're great movies as well. He did Osage, August County, I
Hmm.
think, that won a Pulitzer or something,
Yeah.
maybe. The movie's not as good as the play. I did see the play when it came out. And then there are like a lot of listen, I love off Broadway, man. I love it,
Yeah.
you know. And I think I'm gonna go see Cabaret next week because Jen wants to
Oh,
go. And then I'm looking forward to if I can afford it, and I can't. They're doing Glengarry Glen Ross with Bill Burr,
yeah.
Bob
Yeah.
Odenkirk, a whole bunch of talented. You just want to go see them tear the house down,
I
you
mean,
know, like
Mammoth's another
yeah,
great playwright. Um,
exactly. So yeah,
speaking of playwrights, um, Jules Pfeiffer just passed away.
yes,
Jules
yes,
Pfeiffer, cartoonist, won an Oscar for an animated short in 1961. Um,
right.
wrote some of the biggest books. Sick, Sick, Sick. Also, Phantom Toll Booth for a lot of us growing up was a big book for us. Wrote the screenplay of Popeye.
He did, which I may have seen that movie. I don't know if I have. I did buy the movie, and I will check it out. But before we get to Popeye, because apparently I read somewhere, was it Popeye? Was it E.C. Segar, right? That's his name, the
Yeah,
guy who
yeah,
created Popeye. I feel like his daughter saw the movie and said it's exactly he would have loved it.
yeah.
He's the creator, something like that. But have you ever seen a movie called Little Murders,
No,
uh, directed and starring Alan Arkin, written
no.
by
I love Alan
Jules
Arkin.
Pfeiffer?
No,
Do
I didn't know
yourself a
that.
favor. Do yourself a favor. See
Well,
Little Murders.
talking about playwright, he wrote an unproduced play that became Mike Nichols' Carnal Knowledge.
Oh, okay. I
So
think I did kind of know that. It was an unproduced play that it became the screenplay for.
yeah,
Got
yeah,
it. Final knowledge. Right,
yeah.
right.
Like
Yeah.
95 years
He
old, I think he was, right?
I think he was 95 or 96 or something. I did meet him. I might have met him twice. I definitely met him once where I just shook his hand at the
Mhm.
Society of Illustrators. I think Danny Figueroth was moderating something there with him and other Erwin Hasten,
Oh,
the
wow.
co-creator of the Fox, I believe was there. Um, and I got to know his daughter, Hallie Pfeiffer,
Yes.
because she acted in Bored to Death.
Yeah.
And we also interviewed her for when we were doing Trip City. She was on our podcast,
Mhm.
and she went on to write her own plays as well as act, of course, more.
I think she was
Uh,
showrunning something last I heard. I can't remember what.
yeah, I think she was working on some TV show, and she's super talented, like her dad. But her
Mhm.
dad's like, I mean, like I never read that book. What was the book? The Great Comic Book Superheroes or something like
Yes,
that?
the great comic book. I think it's the great comic book superheroes. Yeah.
And he brought back to life, like the spirit, or he talked about the old timers that had kind of just disappeared in some way or not weren't being talked about as much, and
Yeah,
kind of
it was like
resurrected
the
like
renaissance of
that's
the golden age, the great comic book heroes, not the great comic book superheroes, just the
right.
great comic book superheroes. Yeah.
And it's also semi-autobiographical, because
Mhm.
he worked in Will Eisner's studio, and I don't know. I just felt like that was a linchpin for the comics industry, that particular book that I never saw or read, but I've always heard about it.
Mhm.
And I would love to get a copy of that someday. Or I wish, why not reprint it? Has it been
Yeah, I don't know
reprinted? I don't
why it
think
hasn't been
so.
reprinted. I
That's
think it had
ridiculous.
2 or 3 prints and then just never went back to print.
Right.
I remember the thing about I'm pretty sure I've met him, and I think I met him through Jim Hanley's universe, mostly because we had signings all the time, and I was usually the point man on those. But I know for a fact Jim Hanley, who was co-owner of Jim Hanley's universe, was a huge Jules Pfeiffer fan.
Hmm.
Never said I think you could just say, "Hey Jim, tell me about Jules Pfeiffer," and he would drop so many different anecdotes.
Sure.
And I can't recall any of them right now, but it's just that he was Pfeiffer. I mean, was such a giving person.
Mm.
Just like it seems like I don't know where he got the time, man. Like he was doing so much, and yet he could give his time and give his energy. He was at Stony Brook University. I think he was like
A
an instructor
professor?
there, yeah, or something like that.
I mean, he was such a staunch champion of the comics form
Yes.
at a time. Well, at a time, I think historically, comics were never considered art or literature
Mhm.
until Mouse, or Spiegelman's Mouse, or when it made a lot of money, like i.e. Watchmen and
Right.
Dark Knight Returns, like kind of a thing, and then became, the premise for most of our movies these days.
Right.
But yeah, no, he was fighting the good fight when nobody really was, or
Yeah.
or except the people making the work,
You know,
so.
from what I understand, he died of congestive heart failure, and I feel like had that not happened, he would still be doing more stuff right now, like as we
He
speak.
came out with a new graphic novel a year ago, I think. It was like a
Something, yeah.
trilogy called Kill Mother or something like that.
Mhm.
and then I think the New York Times did a article on him a few months ago, living in like Hudson, New York or whatever.
Yeah.
Still going at it, like no, that guy, you die, his pencil went down because he died. Do you know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
so yeah, no.
I don't,
Uh,
I don't ever foresee, like one of the famous ones, you know, first, before I get into that, rest in peace, Jules Pfeiffer, rest in power. You got your flowers, definitely, and like you will continue to get them for years to come.
yeah.
But Wally Wood is, from what I understand, um, died at his table, or Alex Toth maybe died at his table as well. And I can't,
Gene
I,
Day died at his table. If you
was
remember
that?
Gene Day from Master of Kung
Yes.
Fu,
Yeah.
and he died at his table because he had like walking pneumonia or something and was trying to make a deadline over the weekend. And
Yeah.
anyway, so
Yeah, and I mean, you can probably hazard a guess that maybe Kirby died at his table. Like maybe not immediately. Maybe he got taken to the Cedar Sinai or whatever because he was in LA at the time. But I don't foresee that as a future for myself. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like when I go, it'll be away from this computer, like, or away from a notebook. Maybe I'll have an idea, and like the idea will float away with my soul. But like, I don't foresee that happening to me. I don't, and I think that's because I don't. Sadly, I don't put as much into my comics as I do into other parts of my life. Not my kids. I'm glad that I put more into my kids than my comics.
right.
But I mean, like, because I have a day job, etc. But I think for the past, I would say 5 years, I've come to accept that I'm kind of a glorified hobbyist when it comes to making comics. Even though I put a lot into them, and even though I definitely struggle with them, and like I like it's art in that respect. That like there's a work that's being done. Um, I don't think that I like or like any of the artists that I know, like Simon Fraser, man, like that guy. Like I remember, I don't remember the last time I saw Simon in person, but I remember when I would come up to the studio and just, what time did you get here? He got here early. What time are you leaving? He's leaving late. Like that
Yeah,
dude. And when you look at his work, it shows. Like you can
yeah,
see he's
yeah.
putting all those little details into like a George Perez, like into every little background.
But by the way, just a little footnote on Simon Fraser, who I haven't seen in a while, and he used to share studio with.
Mhm.
I was just texting with him, and he's having a kid.
Oh, God bless him. I
He's
love him.
having a kid.
Another.
But I don't. But at his age, he ain't gonna be a dad. He's gonna be the granddad, right? Like that's how it
I
works,
mean,
right?
that's practically where I'm at right now. I mean, my
Right?
daughter's 12 next month. I turned 52 this year, so I'm, 40 years older than my daughter,
Yep.
uh, 42
Yep.
years older than my son. So yeah, like, but I can't, no way I'm having a kid
Nope. Nope. But
after this.
just to go to what you were saying about, like, I mean, I guess what was something I was picking up was like artists dying at their art table. That's a really romantic
Yeah.
thought, right?
Yeah.
But it's the last thing I want to do is to die at my
Oh,
art table, you know?
yeah. Like I don't wish that for you. Do you know what I mean?
And thank you. And in some ways, I'm very super jealous. You might be, I don't think you're jealous, but if you had had an alternative life where you didn't get married and have kids, let's say, you
Mhm.
probably would feel less like, quote, the hobbyist, sensibility that you're feeling. Whereas I wish I could spend more time, put more time into having a better quality of life where I am hanging
Right.
out with people, with my girlfriend, with family, friends, whatever, which is why, as much as I'm always here at the studio, I do try to like do a game night or
Yeah.
go to a thing, if I can, because otherwise I say no too much,
Right.
and for what? For why? Like I've put in a good amount of time in comics, so comics
Right.
should let me slide a little bit, I think.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, but that's like you're saying, quality of life. Um, there's some days where you just, well, number one, I know you entirely too well. I know you put everything into your work. and I know that you've gone to studios um, like where like they're they're the really funny time when we had shared a studio and I would come in at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock and I'd get the heater running and I get everything and I would just bag on you because you'd come strolling in at 1 o'clock, yay, yay, and like, what do you? And the thing is, what no one sees is that Dean is at the studio till 3. Do you know what I mean? Like, and like because he's got to get this done, and like
Yeah.
I can't like there's a talking about blue collar. There's a blue collar mentality in my head where it's like we work 8 hours. You know what I mean? And Dean is a different being. He works 13 hours. He works 10 hours. He works 6 hours. He works however long the work takes, um, which is to your credit. And I hope you know to the gods above that it's not to your detriment at some point.
I
But
know.
yeah, you're right. Like you do have to get out, you do have to get up, you have to touch grass, you have to walk around, you have to like breathe in whatever cold air is out there or whatever. So
There was something that like I was concerned for a few years there for you because um like I felt like you so badly wanted to be 24/7 comic book guy, right? Like 24/7. I want to be the guy that does that. And I get it because like you don't want to do a job you don't love, right?
right.
So I do what I love, but it's also a curse as well because I can't do anything else, right? Kind of a thing.
Well,
But
there was a point where before I joined your studio, before Seth got sick, um, my wife, and I had a very long conversation. This was before we had Sadie. We had a very long conversation. She's like, "You need to put everything into what you're doing because you're miserable." So I put in my notice with Jim Hanley's, and then for a year and a week, like it was very tough. Like I could not get anything started. I couldn't get work. And then I ended up going up to Archie Comics, and I ended up getting a gig with them, which
right,
led to your gig
that's
doing
right.
the Fox.
That's right.
But it took a year, and I think a lot of people, um, there's such a romantic thing about I'm going to quit my job and put everything into my art. And it's rough, man. Thank God for my wife. Michelle is without a doubt the only reason why I have had any success that I've had because she, number one, believed in me, and number two, put her money where her mouth was. She paid for the last issue of the first miniseries of Stray out of her pocket. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like because I didn't have a job. Like like she really like I call her my co-producer in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. And she's always been a great champion of you. And what I was going to try to finish saying is like, I think I was worried at one point that like, I joked that you were like the Eeyore of comics and one of the episodes, whatever. But like, and listen, I can go there too. Trust me. I know how
Sure,
to feel
I
that
think
way.
any of us can.
Absolutely. But just like I was concerned that the joy of making comics was now evaporated and it was like a numbers game or a popularity contest because that's what it starts to become with at least with
Right.
social media, at
Yeah.
least the way the publishers are behaving these days, right? And so like it took away the spirit of why you do this. And
Mhm.
now if you can have a job, which is something I'm considering,
Mhm.
and just do the job, pay the bills and the rent, maybe be able to buy dinner outside of the peanut butter and
Mhm.
sandwich Chinese food type
Bok
cheap
choy.
Chinese food. Um, but then, so when you do comics, you're only doing it because it's fun.
Right.
It's not necessarily a business concern. Where right now it still is a business concern for me. For you, less of a concern. You
Yeah,
know.
I to be completely transparent, I work at Target here in Pennsylvania, and it's a good job. It's retail. I've done retail almost all my life, so it's nothing I'm not used to. It has its pluses, it has its minuses, obviously, just like every job. Um, but the thing that the thing that I was very fond of when I worked at the comic store was that I was like face to face with the market. I knew what
Hmm.
worked, I knew what didn't work and stuff. And now I work in the electronics entertainment department, so I am around the books. And the thing is, I pay less attention to that. Whereas now when I'm in the books, I'm more like, why does that sell? You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
in terms of how do I make my things sell? Like, and I'm
Right.
not trying to figure out why some book blew up on TikTok. I'm just, trying to see like what like we had a release this week for a book that just came out, and it was like people were running for it. It's called Onyx Storm. Onyx Storm. It's like the third part of four. I don't know how many parts it's going to be actually, but it's like the third part of a series, um, and it's about dragons and dragon
And we're
riding.
talking about, we say book, you mean a novel.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, right. Not a
Um,
comic book store. You're
no,
not talking
no.
about a comic book. You're talking about Target. Okay.
Yes, yes. So like this book came out and like we had like we didn't have like a release, like we used to like at the comic store. It was just we set up a shipper, people came and like within 20 minutes we were sold out. So
Wow.
and we also have orders ongoing online, et cetera, et cetera. And like it's not the same market as when I was working in the comic store. Um, and this is my point. It leads me to I don't have to think when I do my job. It's the weirdest thing. Like it's so muscle memory and like it's easy and it's I don't want to say it's fun because it's work, but like it lends me the opportunity to come up with ideas or come up with a character or come like and it's not that I'm getting the influences from anything in my department or from my job. It's just that because my mind is open and wandering, I can just do my job while thinking, and like I don't ever stop, coming up with ideas or anything. But, at the same time, like I am working a regular day job. So, you know,
I'll say this. There is an advantage to having a quote day job in America. Okay.
hmm,
Because as a writer, you can react to what people are thinking about with elections and
sure.
inaugurations and politics and concerns of all kinds.
Mhm.
Whereas I am a guy that goes from my studio in Red Hook to my apartment in Carroll Gardens, and I go to a play once in a while, or I go to a salon, I go to artsy fartsy things.
Mhm.
I'm not living in quote the real world where people have to go to a job and deal with a car or this or that. I mean, I have a car, but
Yeah.
like not in the normal. I hate to use the word normal, but there's an advantage to being around, let's say, the common man, let's say,
Right.
right? Because then whatever you write and react to is more relatable to a broader audience versus what I might write, or draw. And I used to joke when I met Mark Ditko, is that his name? Mark Zen Ditko, right? Steve Ditko's nephew, or
I know. I didn't know you had a nephew.
do you know him? Oh,
No, no, I never met him.
I met him, and I've been on panels with him and I've talked to him, and he's a cool guy,
Mhm.
and I remember being on a panel because it's something that I started to register when I would read Steve Ditko comics, especially Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, or the early stuff. I was like, I don't know if he ever had a relationship, and it kind of read, even though Stan Lee was writing the script and
Mhm.
making things work, little kind of romance comics, but more so with John Romita, I
Yeah.
think. Okay. It clearly became a romance comic. But I felt like, I don't know, Steve Ditko relates to human beings in certain
Mhm.
ways. And I actually asked on a panel, I said, did Steve ever have a relationship ever? And there was a long pause. And he said, well, we'll write about that in our book or something like that. But in talking to him, I think what it came out was that Steve did kind of have a crush on somebody,
Oh man.
but I don't think he dated anybody.
Yeah.
And that's not a, what do you call it, a criticism or anything. It just, I could tell in his work that something
Was missing.
was missing, at least for the kind of comics I like to write and draw and read, you
Mhm.
know? So I think the disadvantage I have is I'm around, I can have an interaction with a person that has a quote day job,
Mhm.
but I'm not hanging out with people. And I listen, I did a lot of part-time gigs. I was a waiter for 3 years, basically. I've done all kinds of jobs in the 80s and early 90s until I decided to pull the trigger and become a full-time
Time
freelancer.
cartoons. Yeah. So let's start wrapping it up. Do
Okay.
you have anything you want to ask me? Because I have one big question to ask you.
Well, it could derail. I had a silly question that you may have an answer for. Let me find it real quick. Hold on. If you want me to ask you a question, I have one that's nothing like what we've been talking about.
Well, let me ask you my question first, and then
Okay.
we can lead
And
into.
maybe we can palate cleanse it with this other one. Okay.
Okay, so here's the biggest, like, after everything we've talked about, I'm going to bring it home right now as a piece of advice from my de facto mentor to me. Should I take my shirt off?
Oh, you should never wear a shirt again.
Oh, okay.
There we
Oh,
go.
all
There
right.
we go. Okay.
There we go. All
All
right.
right. I don't want to take your moment away. First of all, you got tattoos.
I do. I have a bunch of tattoos. I have
Holy mackerel. Let's see.
my tattoo right there.
Nice.
Joker, I have Batman, Two
Who drew
Face.
that Joker? What's that Joker based on?
Animated series.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is that X-Men on your above
Right.
your nipple?
Yep. Right there. There we go. Trying to get it in there.
Oh my Lord. Do you have like a Christmas tree on your other shoulder? What is that?
Yin Yang.
Oh, yin yang.
Yeah, that was
Wow.
the very first tattoo I ever got.
Wait, and what you see, I've never pulled the trigger on getting a tattoo. But I
Uh,
think the minute you do the first one, then it's okay to do the rest as
oh, dude,
you know,
I like
opens the floodgates.
this one here is the latest one I got. I got this on my birthday last year.
Let's see.
And it's Braille and it says
Right.
I am unfinished.
Ooh,
So
nice.
yeah.
Dude, well, congratulations. Look at
Oh,
you.
oh, look at me. I
Look
feel
at you,
free.
man.
I'm not pulling at my shirt like I usually do, like
That's right. You got the pull at
OCD
your hair now.
inquisiting.
Well, because you've been empowered,
Yes.
okay? Now we can segue to my silly
Yes.
to keep it comics adjacent, you know, as we like to do. Um, Here's my silly question. Okay. And so let me read it out loud.
Okay.
Well, oh, all right. I kind of had it's kind of it might be a two-pronged question. Here we go. Our first collaboration was a five-page Batman story in the back of Batman Adventures #9.
Mhm.
The story is titled The Couch and is essentially a therapy session. Can you tell us what you were thinking when you wrote that story? And then that will lead to my next question, which is this, if you want me to ask it right now.
Okay.
What what if Batman had Superman's powers for 24 hours? What would he do with them? And then I looked it up, and apparently Batman gets Superman's powers in a comic series called Superman/Batman, issues number 53 through 56,
Yeah, I think that
in a
was a Jeff Loeb.
four-part story called Superbat.
Mm.
But what were you thinking when you wrote The Couch that I
Uh,
drew?
yeah.
And then what if Batman had Superman powers for 24 hours, what would he do with them?
So when I came up with the couch, I was working at Jim Hanley's universe. I just remembered thinking, like, it must be a struggle to have a company where you want to hire the best people and to prevent any kind of, like, the next Riddler or the next Penguin from ever happening. um, you have to kind of give people the mental health. We were so ahead of our time with this story, but, like, you have to give them the mental health uh, resources that most companies don't. So the idea was predicated on word association, and how does Bruce Wayne keep his cover as Batman while still being like a de facto employee of his own company that has to go through these routine evaluations. So, like, it really started with, like, when I first thought of it, it was the visual of him saying one thing but meaning something else or
Yep.
thinking something else. And, like, it was just that kind of exercise. And, like, when you were like, hey, do you want to write a 5-page Batman story in the backup? And I was like, sure. I knew that 5 pages wasn't going to allow me to write my Batman story, whatever that might be. Not that I've ever really thought of a Batman story beyond an issue, or even beyond those 5 pages. I'd much rather write Nightwing than Batman, obviously, with Stray. So
Yep.
knowing that it had to be compact, it was just what is the story that can fit in this kind of like in this format.
Yep.
Um, your second question, what does he do with those powers? I think he tries to. I don't think Batman cares. Let me rephrase that. I don't think his concern is the world, which is the difference between Batman and Superman. Batman cares about Gotham City because Gotham City took his parents. So I feel like Batman, with Superman's powers, will do whatever he can to turn Gotham City into basically Metropolis. He will clean it up somehow in 24 hours to give it a chance. It might not work, and I think that's the beauty of it because um, being a superhero means you do have to fail sometimes. Um, but I think that the attempt is what matters. Like I think he would try to make his city a city that people don't have to fear anymore. Like what
You
what's
know, that's interesting because I had a completely different opposite reaction to the idea of it, and maybe this is why I should never write Batman or something. But did you saw the most recent The Batman, right, with
yeah,
Robert
absolutely,
Pattinson, right?
absolutely love it. I think it's
So
before you
it,
say anything, I think if anybody's into Batman, this is the most Batman movie that's ever been. He doesn't use a gun once. And I don't care if it shoots rubber bullets. I don't care if it shoots actual bullets. All the Batman movies up until now have all been Elseworlds, as far as I care.
right, right.
This one is the most Batman. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say what you're kind of saying in a way just made me remind me of a scene early on, maybe even the first scene in the movie is you see a criminal running or something, or someone who looks like they're running with a bag of money, whatever. I don't quite remember, but it's raining and there's a shadow in an alley
Mhm.
and people are afraid. And maybe it's the end of the movie. Thugs are afraid to go into shadows because Batman might be in there.
No, that's the beginning of this one.
And
Yeah.
that's the beginning. And that's how spooky Batman has become, and the effect of Batman, right, is in the shadows. You don't want to be in the shadows because Batman might be in
Batman
there.
might be
Okay.
there. Yeah.
And in a way, I think what he might do as Superman with Superman powers is try to bring light
Mhm.
to Gotham, which is what Superman kind of does, I think, in his own sensibilities in Metropolis to bring
Mhm.
light. But if my initial reaction was, I, I think he would go crazy.
Mhm.
I think he might go crazy with the power because of the power. And then what do you do with that power?
The
Which is
hearing.
like what I think Superman or Clark Kent or Kal-El has to figure out. What do I do with this power I have? Right.
Mhm.
And with Batman, if he just had 24 hours, suddenly his mind be racing. Now it's 23 hours and 58 minutes. I've been thinking for 2 minutes,
Mhm.
too long. And then trying to figure out what would powers do, to do. And it's not like becoming the Flash and running around and changing, all kinds of stuff and screwing in light bulbs into alleys or whatever. But or how do you rehabilitate the people in Arkham Asylum, or do you destroy it all because you just get rid of it, you just level it, right, in
Mhm.
some way? I don't know the answer. And now it makes me want to read that comic, where he had Superman powers for
Mhm.
however long the story lasted, because it's such a fascinating concept, because Batman doesn't have any powers. He has money,
Yeah.
you know?
Which is a power, as we have learned
Absolutely.
over this week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So anyway, thanks for answering that question. I thought that was a
Absolutely.
good
Let's
question.
just go out on a high note. Um, that's for the
Yeah.
my left arm is so undeveloped versus my right
Are you a
arm.
righty?
Yeah,
There you go. That's what
yeah.
it is.
Um,
So
thank you everybody for joining us. I will have a shirt on next time, I promise. Um, uh, we will talk to you guys next week. Dean, I'll talk to you next week, if not sooner. Enjoy yourselves, everybody, and let's help Reese out.
thanks, Vito.